Welcome back to a special edition of Thinking Critical After Dark, because we're going to be covering one of the subjects I loathe the most in all of comic books, not just comic books, video games, movies, TV shows, all of it. I am so done and have been done for a very long time with the evil Superman trope. Superman is the symbol of hope, not only in the DC Comics universe, but a symbol of hope for all mankind. And I truly believe that. Superman is the most important character in all of American comic books because of what he represents, and everybody always wants to tear the character down, show just how evil he could be or should be, or how evil they wouldn't like him to be, and I can't take it anymore. And it sounds like DC couldn't take it anymore, at least for one shot. We actually had comic book artist Liam Sharp, who I'm a huge fan of, come out with some concept art and a pitch that he and Tom King did that was actually turned down from DC Comics. And this just opens up a larger world of conversation to have about evil Superman. But first, let's talk about Liam Sharp and Tom King. On social media, artist Liam Sharp shared concept art from an unproduced Superman series for DC, which he says would have been a Heart of Darkness type story with Supes gone mad, putting in the role of Kurtz, made famous by Marlon Brando in the film Apocalypse Now, which in turn was adapted from the Joseph Conrad novella Heart of Darkness. Liam Sharp shared the piece of art on Instagram explaining that the project sadly fell through and was planned to be written by iconic author Tom King. Not my words. Sharp further elaborated that marketing didn't believe it would sell, which is why the proposed Superman story by Tom King and Liam Sharp never came to fruition. And I am very thankful for that. Whoever at DC Comics made that decision, congratulations, round of applause. You actually did your job. For one freaking day, you finally said no to a terrible project. Superman going insane like Colonel Kurtz in Apocalypse Now is not the story anybody wanted to read. And quite frankly, I'm a huge fan of Liam Sharp, especially Liam Sharp's traditional art style. The comic art style that he's using now, which is a little bit more abstract, has a lot more like painting to it and stuff like that, does not ever fit the character of Superman, even if he's evil. It's just so different. Does it fit Batman Reptilian, where you have a weird reptile that wants to rape Killer Croc because it's his dad? Sure, that story is so far out there and so fucking weird. It does actually fit the style of Liam Sharp. But for the most part, with what Liam Sharp is doing these days, he doesn't actually fit superhero comic books anymore. And I think he's terrific. And I think what he's doing right now, he's doing at an excessively high level. You know, and it works for stuff like Stonehenge, but doesn't really fit superhero comic books anymore. And you saw the proposed piece of art, the inspiration, or the art that was created by the inspiration of Tom King there, and it would not have worked for Superman. It was actually a really bad idea. I do prefer Liam Sharp's traditional style, which is awesome on Conan, and, you know, kind of big, bulky characters like that, had a lot of detail into it, but it seems like he's kind of moved on from that style. Unfortunately, Tom King, while some would say Superman Up in the Sky, I think that's the name of it, is a love letter to Superman. I don't think Tom King writes love letters to anyone but himself, and that is one character I'm very happy Tom King really hasn't had the pleasure of destroying whole cloth, which he certainly would have tried to do in that story, Heart of Darkness version of Superman. Just what a stupid concept there, and it's good to know that DC Comics aren't accepting every stupid fucking pitch out there, because that one should have been rejected outright just on concept alone. What a terrible version of this. But we are getting lots of these kinds of characters. While evil Superman stories are not a recent development, they have been dominating modern DC storytelling. After the success of Injustice told as a fighting game, many more stories of evil Superman told within even outside the DC realm have been reaching even more casual fans in different forms of media. With so many versions of the character existing, fans are starting to grow tired of it, since the version of the character has now become an overused trope. And that was written, I believe, in 2021. And I would say it's beyond an overused trope at this point. There are too many evil Superman, especially in DC Comics. And I'm not saying get rid of all of them. And I'm not saying there aren't a few of these evil Supermen that don't have some merit to them. But it has gotten well beyond critical mass. We got Brightburn, Hyperion, Omni-Man, Homelander, Plutonian, and those are just to name a few. I was able to write down, and I'm not going to name them all off because it would take too long. I believe I can come up with, at a minimum, 40 evil Supermen right now that exist somewhere. And it's so played out. And I understand, Superman's so hard to write because his moral compass is always pointing true north. He represents the best that we could all hope to be. But you don't have to ruin that to bring Superman down to our level. See, the thing that's supposed to be happening is we are supposed to raise ourselves to Superman's level, not bring him down to our level. It actually defeats the purpose of the character in the lore and everything that's been built up over the past 80 plus years with the character and what he truly represents. And it gets very, very tiresome, especially if you're a Superman fan, because now people don't even recognize Superman is true justice in the American way. They think he's fucking Homelander. They think he's injustice. They think he's always going evil and destroying the world and taking it over. And it gets very, very tiresome. Now, there are a few versions of evil Superman, especially in DC Comics. I'll cover 3 here that at least have some merit or at least warrant a further discussion for interesting reasons. The first one is Red Sun. Born in an alternate timeline where the Soviet Union raised him, this Kal-El variant fought for Stalin socialism and the international expansion of the Warsaw Pact. He quashed human rights, broke global democracy, and used brain surgery to turn thousands or millions into Superman robots. Ultimately, Soviet Superman turned his back on evil, but only at an incalculable cost to humanity. This is, in my opinion, the most worthwhile evil Superman story ever told. I like Bizarro, and I certainly like, Ultraman, and even like the Nazi version of Superman has a place out there in the multiverse somewhere. But I don't think anyone has been able to use the evil Superman trope to its fullest extent the way that Mark Miller was able to do with Red Sun, because it doesn't really say so much about Superman himself. It doesn't say a whole lot about communism. Obviously, we're in the Cold War and everything that was going on at the time, but much like Superior Spider-Man, when you think about Doc Ock's mind going into Peter Parker's body, you're able to portray just how bad things could be if the wrong person got bitten by that radioactive spider. Remember when Dr. Octavius finally uses Spider-Man's powers and realizes he's been holding back the entire time because he literally could have ripped them all to shreds in a second? When you get into Red Sun, if he doesn't land in Smallville and he doesn't have the Kents there with him to guide him and teach him about humanity and the importance of freedom, justice, freedom, the American way, all that kind of stuff, and that doesn't become ingrained to who Clark Kent is, the real hero behind Superman, you could have disastrous results. So when you see Red Sun, it's really a statement not on how bad communism is, and I do hate communism, but how amazing the Kents are and how amazing Western culture really is. And it's almost, kind of terrifying when you read Red Sun, the way that it's portrayed. Like, Superman's not brainwashed. He truly believes in what he's fighting for, just like he does in the regular universe. And it all goes terribly wrong, and he becomes this enormous agent of evil, this enormous cautionary tale of how bad things could have been if he had landed on the other side of the planet with what was going on there and the agent of destruction that he would have become. And I think what Mark Miller was able to portray there really says amazing things about the character that he did become and why he's so special and how it could have all been so bad. Now, everyone has taken that concept and amped it up and up and up and up until you get Injustice Superman, and he's fucking ripping people apart and becoming the tyrannical ruler of Earth and all that kind of stuff. But Red Sun did it the best, in my opinion. Another very interesting evil version of Superman, Superboy Prime. As a refugee from DC's Silver Age, Superboy Prime was already much more powerful than the characters in the current continuity. Things got worse when he constructed solar-powered armor using anti-monitor tech and tried to make a perfect world via mass murder. Given his metatextual awareness of the true nature of the DCU, Superboy Prime has often made fourth wall breaking observations while rampaging across the universe, leading to the speculation that the villain personified toxic fandom. Now, that is not exactly in line with Superboy Prime, especially the original incarnation of the character, during the original Crisis event, Crisis on Infinite Earths, when you actually had Superboy Prime arrive. And he's a cool character. He's certainly a worthy foe. Very, very powerful. A man out of time that wants to save everybody from themselves, like the worst inclination that a Superman can have, that you can't let humanity play out its life and make its own mistakes. You have to solve all of them for them, which means that you have to put people into bondage, into servitude, serving basically your own wants and needs and all that kind of stuff. Now, the interesting thing about Superboy Prime is what Jeff Johns did with the character. And I like Jeff Johns. I think Jeff Johns is one of the truly transcendent talents that we've had in modern comic books. And I think people will still be reading Jeff Johns stories in 20, 30, 50 years. I think he's that good of a writer. And it won't be one story, it'll be multiple stories, because I think he's had really, really fantastic transcendent runs on multiple characters. Superman is one of them. Green Lantern is another one. Maybe even you can go to his Aquaman stuff is actually really good, despite people not really being aware of it. Justice League, certainly. But Superboy Prime is really, really interesting. Certainly, comic book creators in the past have used their characters as a vehicle to answer criticism or even talk about the fans, maybe even in a negative light. But Jeff Johns with Superboy Prime was one of the most overt reactions to toxic fandom we've ever seen. And it was really one of the original incarnations with a writer really lashing out at the fans and telling them they're wrong and all that stuff, using the character of Superboy Prime, which really does change the context of the character and what he represents, but was also a sounding board for Jeff Johns criticizing people because he had taken Superman and really changed him. Superman had really grown up in the early 80s, mid 80s, I guess, with Man of Steel, and he was reverting him more back to Silver Age Superman, which I still think was a big mistake. And comic book fans were not happy about that. And Jeff Johns using a character to criticize the fans so overtly is something that I don't think enough people talk about. And certainly it's something that a lot of writers do these days. And you don't think of Jeff Johns as really being one of those people that criticizes fans or tries to go out there and villainize fans or talk smack on them. But he was like the first one to do it really overtly in comic books with Superboy Prime, which I think is very interesting. The last one I'll talk about, Hank Henshaw, the cyborg Superman, is a super imposter in Terminator Drag. Already an established villain, Henshaw used Doomsdays and Superman's apparent murder, destruction, and the death of Superman as an opportunity. He built a Kryptonian cyborg body out of Man of Steel's DNA. Using his ability to affect machines with his consciousness, he tried to ruin Superman's reputation by destroying Coast City. The real Superman and company eventually defeated and discredited the so-called Man of Tomorrow, but he's a resilient villain. The reason I'm talking about Hank Henshaw is because that design is so amazing. He's the best looking one. And I like some of the evil Superman out there. But as a foil to Superman himself and not pretending to actually be Superman, we were in on it. He was duping the DC universe into thinking he was Superman. It was actually successful at it, where the U.S. government actually like acknowledged of the 4 Supermen in Age of Superman, he was like the one that was really Superman. But he was evil the whole time, was just trying to tarnish the Superman's reputation and all that stuff. And I think Hank Henshaw is an amazing villain, totally underused. We should be seeing more Hank Henshaw within DC Comics as a foil for Superman. We never really get threats to Superman and Superman comic books today that are physical equals or even close to it anymore. He kind of wins all his fights really easy these days. And I think a character like Hank Henshaw, the cyborg Superman, is a really badass version of Superman that provides the threat that he can't overcome, but also has an amazing look. You can get some really cool covers out of him. And I'm just a big Hank Henshaw fan because I am also a hypocrite. As much as I don't like the evil Superman trope, it does have a place going against Superman and allowing him to overcome it. When I really hate it, it's when people try to establish that as a real version of Superman. When you do it, kind of like a Hank Henshaw or a Superboy Prime, you know, within the universe and Superman going against them being a little bit more powerful and him overcoming it, I think it actually works. But I am absolutely done with the what if Lois Lane died? What if Superman lost faith in humanity? What if Superman went crazy? What if Superman shoved a red piece of kryptonite up his ass and went mad for a decade. It just gets, it's so played out. They need to get people that actually like Superman writing the comic book, people that understand what he represents, that are not ashamed of true justice in the American way, and actually go out there and write real Superman stories. Tom King is not one of those people. He wants to do the Heart of Darkness, Apocalypse Now version of Superman, which is absolutely stupid. And I'm glad that they said no to that. If you like what I'm doing here, providing an honest viewpoint of comic books and their misgivings and what they're doing well these days, which is more bad than good, unfortunately, and you would like to support Think Critical YouTube, I do want to invite you to come visit me on Patreon. There's a link in the video description. You support me there and you get awesome extra podcasts with all of your favorite guests. You get audio copies of every single video I make on here and exclusive videos and polls and stuff like that as well. If you haven't checked it out, I hope to see you there real soon.